The emerald ash borer is a destructive, highly invasive, non-native insect that was confirmed in Dubuque County in 2015 and is causing severe damage among our ash tree population. Here to talk about this problem, City of Dubuque Park Division Manager Steve Faisal and Urban Forester Tom Kramer. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Hello.
Okay, Tom, let's start with you. Can you give us some background on this insect? How did it get here to Iowa, to Dubuque County, and why is it so destructive?
Well, the insect was first discovered in 2002 in the Detroit, Michigan area. Assuming it came across in shipping crates to that area, and then just the natural spread of it brought it all through Illinois and down through the other states, and eventually started to get into Iowa. It's first found it in Allamakee County, and then in 2014, we did an ash tree inventory just to get ready to see how many ash trees we had on the city streets and on city properties. And we accumulated that number, and in 2015, we found the emerald ash borer in the Key West area. And from there, it is just unbelievable how this spreads and just overtook the city. And I'd say right now, we're right in the height or the middle of the problem that we have with the destruction of all the ash trees.
And what does this bug do? What makes it so destructive to trees?
Well, the adult beetle actually doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It feeds off the top of the trees, and it's very minimal, the leaf damage that it does. Now what happens, that happens during the months of May and June and a little bit into July, and then that adult beetle will lay eggs in the cracks and the fissures of the ash tree. And it lays its eggs, and each one will lay about 100 eggs, of which approximately 60% are female, so that multiplies out just immensely. Okay, so what happens is when them eggs hatch in the fall, that turns in, it gets a larvae, and that's the stage of the emerald ash borer, and it will chew its way underneath the bark, and it gets into the cambium of the tree. And what it does, instead of just going up and down like other borers do, which would be okay, this one, the emerald ash borer, is a serpentine, and it's covering a lot of ground by going this, and then you just put hundreds and hundreds of the larvae in one tree, and that's what destroys the tree. The vessels of the tree cannot take up the nutrients that the top of the tree needs. So if you notice, the ash trees are all dying from the top down. In the middle of the tree, where the trees are, where the trunk stops and where the branches and the limbwood all start, we're seeing a lot of epicormic growth, which is sucker growth, and that is the tree's defense mechanism fighting this bug off.
Okay. And you mentioned that a few years ago we did an inventory on the city's ash trees, and you also mentioned that we're kind of at the height of this infestation. So do we have an estimate on how many ash trees there are and how many of those are infected?
We counted up 1,700 ash trees on the streets, in the city parks, and other city properties. We've treated over 400 of them, trying to save them, and how we decided to treat them was the smaller ash trees and the health of the ash tree determined which ones we did. So we've done 400 of them, and we're on our second cycle now. You got to do them every 3 years. So we're seeing very good results. I would estimate that we're about 90% survival, the ones that we're treating.
Okay. And so those are city trees, you said, the trees that the city's responsible for.
Correct.
I'm sure we've got some viewers watching that are looking at, maybe going to be looking in their backyards for trees that they own. What's the easiest way to identify an ash tree from other types of deciduous trees?
Well, all the bark has a diamond-shaped pattern on the trunks, and that's kind of one way to tell. The easiest way is by looking at the leaves, and the leaves and the branching pattern, it's opposite. So like if you have a stem coming up here, you'll have a branch on each side of it, and that's opposite. And that's about the easiest way to tell. If you live on the west end of town, probably more than likely you got an ash tree, because back in the 60s and 70s when Dutch elm disease went through, that was the recommended tree to plant, and the city planted a lot of them, and all the residential areas, a lot of them. It was a fast-growing tree that produced a lot of shade in a hurry. So that's where we're at now.
Steve, let's talk to you for a minute. Maybe one of the indicators of how severe this problem is the fact that the emerald ash borer became a city council top priority when they did their 2019 goal setting sessions. How does that designation help you and your staff fight this problem?
Yeah, the great thing about that is that the city council and city management is fully aware of the problem of emerald ash borer. We did write a readiness plan that was adopted by the council in 2015, and then later that year we actually did successfully identify it. So we've been working off that readiness plan, trying to figure out what's the best way about going about treating trees, removing trees, and those types of things. We have received, in the last 4 years, we've received funding to purchase our injection system for treating the trees that Tom previously spoke about. The last couple budget cycles, I would say in FY19, we were approved for $20,000 in our operating budget to contract out some tree removals, so that our forestry activity is relatively small. There's 3 full-time staff and 2 seasonals during the summer. So obviously trying to keep up with 1,000 ash trees is a project. So we were granted some funding in FY19, and then in FY20 we were granted an additional $25,000 to continue contract removals. So we're up to about $45,000 a year right now for contract removals. And one of the great things the council also did in our FY20 budget is they put $25,000 in our operating budget for tree replanting. So in previous years we haven't had a lot of money or time to replant trees because mainly our focus has been on removals. Another great thing that's happened is Dubuque Trees Forever formed in early 2017. So Dubuque Trees Forever formed in the spring of 2017. And they've been a great asset so far too, helping us get some of these trees in the ground. We recently did a planting in the September of 2019 to help us get some of those trees back in the canopy. So it's great to see that the council's interested, they're aware of the issue. Going through the FY21 budget cycle, we'll be really looking at it and requesting additional funding, looking at what other resources we might need, and proposing that at our budget presentation to address the council goal.
Okay. So we have a plan, and we have some funds to be working on this problem, and you talked about removal a little bit. Let's go back to talk about the treatment a little bit more. Tell us a little bit more in detail about what that treatment process involves and how successful it's been. You touched on it a little bit, but I know you brought some visual aids too to help our residents understand when you talk about treating an ash tree, what are you actually doing? Okay,
we're actually injecting a product into the tree. We got a one-way valve here that we drill into the tree, is about a ½ inch. We put this in the tree, pound it in, and then we take this, it's just like a needle you'd see, and it goes into this port, we call it a port, and we shoot the product into there. It's under pressure air, so it only takes 2 seconds to do an in, and we'll go around the tree. We measure the tree at the diameter at breast height, and we have a chart that tells us how much product we have to put into that tree. It's a one-way valve, so it doesn't leak back out. It's very safe and user-friendly, and we put that product in there, and then the tree takes it up through the tree and gets it up to the top of the tree, and that's what we want to do to kill the bug the adult beetle when it's feeding off the top of the tree. But mainly we're trying to kill that larvae that is in the tree, and then when it's eating inside the cambium, that's what's hopefully going to kill the larvae for the ash borer.
Is that a treatment that you're doing to trees that are already showing signs of infestation, or are you doing this only to trees that are not?
No, it's best if you can do it before it's showing signs. Right. They recommend if you got it within 15 miles of your area, you should start treating, and we're real proactive on that. We got on it right away, and we've treated over 400 ash trees right now we're trying to save, and I said we're having about 90% success rate on them after 3 years.
Okay. What kind of a process do you use to try to determine which trees to try and save and which maybe you're going to let nature take its course?
Well, when we did our inventory, we rated them as poor, fair, and good condition. All the good condition trees, we treated all of them. And we did some of the ones that weren't fair if they were small enough, but the larger ones, they were stressed from other factors before emerald ash borer, and just the time it takes to do a large tree like 36 inches or bigger, it's just not real cost effective and for the time it takes, so we're letting nature take its course on that.
Okay. What advice would you offer to residents who are watching that maybe have a healthy ash tree in their yard or an ash tree that's in decline?
Okay, well, if you want to save that tree, you better do something. And I don't want to say you're too late now, but you're getting real close to being too late because every ash tree is infected right now. The white ashes, the bug doesn't like that as well as the green ash, but it will get the white ash. And a lot of people have white ashes. You're going to see them now in the fall. They'll turn purple. It's called an autumn purple ash. But a lot of people haven't treated them. We just spoke to somebody last week and said, boy, if you want to save that, you better inject it, because if you don't, you're going to lose it. There's different companies you can call that have it injected, and there's also an over-the-counter product that you can purchase at home and garden stores where you can treat it. You just have to pull your sod back, sprinkle the product on there and water it in, and that's very effective also. They kind of recommend a tree 20 inches or less to do that, though. They call that a soil drenching process, and we have done that also with very good results.
Okay. Now, the city trees that you're treating, are most of those on park property or undeveloped property that the city owns, or are a lot of them the street trees, as they're called, between the curb and the sidewalk? What do you think the split is for how you're treating trees?
Well, the vast majority of them are street trees between the sidewalk and the curb. We can take like Chevenel Drive, for instance, out there. There's 100 of them out there on both sides and up Siple. So we got 100 of them right there that we did, that we're trying to save. Southwest Tech Park has probably 25 or 30 of them right there. Most of our park areas, the trees were huge. They got planted in the 60s and 70s, so we didn't treat a whole lot of them in parks. We have a couple on fire stations around town that we have treated to save them.
And Steve, going back to private property owners that have ash trees on their property, what liability concerns might they have related to a tree in decline or a dead tree maybe?
Sure. So the city does not specifically deal with private property trees. It's typically a private property issue. The education piece we want to get out there from the city's perspective piece is, like Tom mentioned, if you have an ash tree, it probably has emerald ash borer. If you're not treating it, it will die. And with that brings that number of problems. If it's in the front of your house, it could fall on your house. If it's over a sidewalk, a limb could fall on a vehicle or someone. It could fall on the neighbor's house. And also, like Tom said, there's some rather large ash trees in a lot of neighborhoods. And when those do get to a point where they're at severe decline, they'll just start snapping. The branches and some of the bigger limbs will just start snapping and falling off. So we really want to get the word out there to, check your landscape, see if you have ash trees in your property. If you do, if it's past decline, you really should try and get that tree down so you're not incurring those liability damages from your neighbor or from someone walking by, or even your own by falling on your house. So we just want to make sure people know that there's a lot of ash trees out there that the city has not inventoried, especially in roadside ditches and undeveloped alleys and those other spaces where we just don't have the time or the manpower to do that kind of survey. So the important thing to remember is, check. We're at a point in the cycle. It's been here, we estimate 5 to 6 years now, at least. Typically they say it's when you find it, it's already been here for a couple of years. So we're pushing that 6-7 year cycle. You're really starting to see decline as well. So people will know pretty well. Most people's going to know if they have an ash tree in their yard, and we just want to encourage them to be educated about it. We have an entire page on emerald ash borer on our city parks page under trees. It gives you all kinds of different information: how to identify emerald ash borer, how to identify if I have an ash tree. So there's a lot of good resources on our webpage as well. That people can refer to related to emerald ash borer and what we're doing and what private homeowners can do.
And maybe this is a good time too to remind people that, if they are dealing with a dead tree on their property, it's not just what's above ground. If they're dealing with a stump, to be conscious of that underground infrastructure that may be impacted, whether it's an electrical line, a water line, sewer or gas lines. Those are all things to keep in mind as they're dealing with stumps they may have to remove as well.
Absolutely. And we've had some street trees uproot and cause some pretty good damage to sidewalks and other things, and and vehicles and houses. So especially when there's storms, these trees are getting weak. The root structure is starting to fail. During these storm events, they tend to blow over. They will blow over. They tend to blow over, obviously, because they're declining. So yeah, it's important to recognize the fact if you have an ash tree, and the only other thing I would ask of the public would be, we are aware of the situation. We are aware of what's going on. We are addressing the emerald ash borer as best we can as a city at this time, and we ask them to be patient with us. We know you may have a dead ash tree in front of your house. We're aware of it. We've done the inventory. Tom and his crew are constantly out. We're tackling the worst ones first, obviously, the ones that are severely declining or absolutely 100% dead. So that's what our contractors are working on. That's what Tom's working on. But Tom also has other responsibilities. When we have storms, they have to do storm cleanup. When we have trees fall in streets or on right-of-ways, not necessarily ash trees. So our primary focus is ash trees, but obviously we have all the other responsibilities related to the maintenance of those street trees. So we ask the public to be patient with us while we continue to work through this process.
Okay. And as you mentioned, we're looking at being in more than 5 years of dealing with this, its presence in Dubuque. If you look to the future, maybe 10 years from now, what do you think our urban tree canopy is going to look like as a result of this pest?
I think we're on the right path. I think City Council and management recognizes the fact that we need to do something, and that's why emerald ash borer has become a top priority. They've given us some operating funds to replant these trees. I think our canopy will be a lot smaller, obviously. We will run into some restrictions where in the past, trees were planted in very, very narrow planting lawns, 1 or 2 foot lawns between the sidewalk and the curb, and over time that just tends to cause problems. So there may be areas in the city where we're not replanting trees. Maybe we're working with the homeowner to possibly plant one in their yard if they have a yard. There's a lot of downtown areas that people don't have yards and the planting lawn's very small. So, the canopy may not be as plentiful there, but we're hoping with the process we're going through now and the funding we've received so far, and with the funding hopefully we can get in the future for FY21 budget, that 10 years down the road, our canopy will be coming back. It'll be a little smaller, but we're really working on species diversity. There's a lot of other things out there than emerald ash borer that we're constantly monitoring. So we have to really keep an eye on that and make sure we're planting the right trees.
You read my mind. That was going to be my next question. As you're replacing trees, as you're able to do that with funding and time, I was going to ask what type of species you're choosing, but it sounds like you have a plan for that as well, and some different options, probably depending upon the location as well.
Right. So we have a street tree policy that we use it's based on planting lawn size and overhead wires, relation to utilities. There's a whole map on our website too, where where you should place trees in relation to your driveways and stop signs and fire hydrants and gas meters and all those things. So it's really taking that comprehensive approach to make sure we're putting the tree in the right place, but also selecting the right tree at the right time. We have a recommended street tree list that Tom looks at every year to make sure that we're staying on top of the proper trees. They're kind of rated in a small, medium, large category. So we look at where the tree is going to be placed and what type of tree and how large it can get or how large it will get. So we make sure we pick the right spot. And then obviously, like I said, Tom's always monitoring. There's always something on the horizon. So there's always other bugs and pests out there. So we're really trying to stay on top of that too.
Yeah. Well, I know so many people, residents and visitors alike, appreciate all the trees that we have here in Dubuque, and you guys have a very intimidating task ahead of you in responding to this issue, but it sounds like you have a good plan and you're working hard on it. So anything you'd like to add before we close the program?
Anything you want to add?
No, just like Steve said, just everybody be patient. It's going to be a long process, and we will come back and get your stump. That will get done, but
as you
right
said,
now
priorities.
we need to get them trees down first.
Get rid of the liability.
Yeah.
Get the tree down so no one gets hurt. No
Yeah.
one, it's a safe neighborhood. You know, the stump we can come back and get later.
Okay. Well, thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for watching City Channel Dubuque.